Welcome to Royal Insights, where we explore the stories, traditions, and fascinating details behind royal families and dynasties from around the world. Join us as we uncover the history, culture, and curiosities that connect crowns across continents. Why are so many European royals related? Europe, a continent of borders, languages, wars, and crowns. From Madrid to Moscow, from London to Vienna, royal palaces once stood as symbols of power that seemed separate, distinct, even rival. Different flags, different thrones, different destinies. And yet, if you trace the bloodlines carefully enough, something surprising emerges. A hidden pattern. A family resemblance that goes far beyond facial features or inherited titles. Because for centuries, Europe's royal families were not just connected, they were, quite literally, one extended family. So why are so many European royals related? The answer is not romance, it is not coincidence. It is strategy, survival, and a very old obsession with power. This is the story of how Europe's crowns became one tangled family tree. To understand royal Europe, we must first forget modern ideas of marriage. Today, marriage is often about love, but for centuries, among royal families, marriage was diplomacy, a treaty without ink, a peace agreement sealed not with signatures, but with children. If two kingdoms married into each other, war became less likely. If they did not, war was often inevitable. So princes and princesses were not just children, they were political assets. From the moment they were born, their marriages were planned across borders, sometimes decades in advance. A French princess might be sent to Spain, a Spanish prince to Austria, a German duchess to Russia, and slowly, generation after generation, Europe's ruling houses began to interlock like gears in a single machine. What began as alliances became entanglement. What began as strategy became genealogy. And what began as diplomacy became something far more permanent, a shared bloodline stretching across an entire continent. If there is one dynasty that embodies this system, it is the Habsburgs. For centuries, the Habsburgs did not just rule parts of Europe. They ruled by marriage. Their motto, unofficial but accurate, could almost be summarized as, "Let others wage war. You, marry." Through carefully arranged unions, the Habsburgs accumulated territories across Austria, Spain, the Netherlands, and beyond. At their height, one family controlled one of the most vast and complex empires in Europe, without relying primarily on conquest. But there was a cost. When generations of rulers intermarry within a limited circle of royal families, the gene pool shrinks, and in the case of the Habsburgs, it shrank dramatically. By the 17th century, the effects became visible. The most famous example is Charles II of Spain. He suffered from severe physical and developmental issues, the result of generations of close intermarriage within the same dynastic network. His death in 1700 did not just end a life, it ended a dynasty and triggered the War of the Spanish Succession, a reminder that royal interconnection could create stability, but also catastrophe. Now let us return to Britain. By the 18th century, Britain faced a different problem: succession. As we saw earlier, the throne passed to the House of Hanover in 1714, bringing German princes into British monarchy. But this was not an isolated event. It was part of a broader European pattern, because by this point, most royal families were already related through a web of earlier marriages. Germany was not a foreign exception. It was a central node in the royal network of Europe. Dozens of small German states produced an extraordinary number of royal spouses. Why? Because Germany was politically fragmented, and its many minor courts were perfect places to find acceptable noble partners who were still within the aristocratic system, but not too powerful to threaten major kingdoms. So British royals, Russian royals, Danish royals, Greek royals all repeatedly married German princes and princesses. Over time, German bloodlines became the connective tissue of European monarchy. If one person sits at the center of modern European royal genealogy, it is Queen Victoria. She ruled Britain for over 60 years, but her influence extended far beyond Britain. Victoria and her husband, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, had 9 children. Those children were strategically married into nearly every major European royal house. One became Empress of Germany, another became Queen of Norway, another married into the Russian imperial family, another into the Spanish monarchy. Because of this, Victoria earned an unofficial title, the Grandmother of Europe. By the early 20th century, many of Europe's monarchs were her direct descendants, which created an extraordinary situation. At the outbreak of World War I in 1914, the rulers of Britain, Germany, and Russia, King George V, Kaiser Wilhelm II, and Tsar Nicholas II, were all first cousins. They shared a grandmother, Queen Victoria. Imagine that. A global conflict involving armies, commanded by men who grew up calling each other family. And yet, familial bonds were not enough to prevent war, because by this point, nationalism had replaced dynastic loyalty. The age of royal unity was ending. As Europe entered the modern era, something changed. Kings and queens were no longer the sole centers of power. Parliaments, constitutions, and nation-states began to rise. And with them, the idea of monarchy shifted. Royals were no longer just rulers. They were symbols of nations. And suddenly being too connected became a problem. During World War I, Britain's royal family, originally the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, had a German name. In a time of war against Germany, this was politically inconvenient. So in 1917, King George V made a symbolic decision. He changed the family name to Windsor, a new identity for a new era. Across Europe, similar rebranding and distancing took place. But the bloodlines remained. Names changed. Genealogy did not. So why did this pattern persist for so long? There are 3 key reasons. First, politics. Royal marriages were tools of diplomacy, a way to secure alliances without war. Second, exclusivity. Royal families believed they were fundamentally separate from ordinary people. Marriage outside royalty was often seen as inappropriate, even dangerous to legitimacy. Third, trust. In a world of constant political instability, marrying another royal family felt safer than marrying a powerful noble who might try to seize power. So monarchs repeatedly turned to the same limited pool of eligible families: Britain, Germany, Russia, Denmark, Spain, Austria. And the cycle continued, generation after generation, until nearly every European royal house was related to every other. Today, most European monarchies are constitutional. Their power is limited or symbolic, but the family connections remain astonishing. Many current monarchs share ancestry through Queen Victoria, Christian IX of Denmark, known as the father-in-law of Europe, or earlier dynastic links stretching back centuries. Even today, weddings between royal families still carry symbolic weight, not for power, but for continuity. A reminder that these institutions, once rivals, are still branches of the same ancient tree. And so we arrive at a paradox. European royalty was built to preserve difference, to mark borders, to define nations. And yet, through centuries of strategic marriage, it achieved the opposite. It created unity, not political unity, but biological and familial unity. A continent of competing crowns that slowly became one extended household. Which raises the final question: were Europe's royal families ever truly separate at all? Or were they always one dynasty spread across many thrones? Today, when we look at European monarchs, we often see tradition, ceremony, and national identity. But beneath the crowns and titles lies something older, a shared ancestry shaped by centuries of strategy, survival, and power. A reminder that history is not only written in borders, it is written in bloodlines. And in Europe, those bloodlines tell a story far more interconnected than most people ever realize.